Welcome to Carter's Corner Pocket, where we feel the rocket. Today, we're talking tres leches. You want to start off by preheating your oven to 350 degrees. Today I'm using a 9x13 glass baking dish. You want to get yourself a stick of butter and butter up the dish. I've used metal sheet cake pans before and they've worked perfectly fine. For this recipe, we're going to bake the cake and leave it in the dish. We're not removing it. If you want to cook a half a sheet cake, just double up the recipe and it'll work perfectly. Now we're going to add the dry ingredients to a separate, smaller mixing bowl in order to sift it in the larger mixing bowl pictured in the background. We're going to add 1 cup of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of salt in a medium-sized mixing bowl. To add the appropriate amount of flour, loosen it up with a spoon and spoon it in the cup, then level it off with a knife. Here I'm adding 1 cup of unbleached flour because my beautiful wife is a maniac and demands unbleached flour. All-purpose, regular bleached flour will work well if you like being bleached on the inside out. Next, you're going to add your 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Make sure you level it off on the can. Then you want to add a half a teaspoon of salt. Don't worry about adding this much salt. It's a very sweet dish and the salt will balance it well. Now give it a quick whisk just to make sure the dry ingredients are homogeneous and mix well with the wet ingredients. Now go ahead and pour in your dry ingredients and get to sifting. My daughter over here is just learning, so I had to show her the best way to do it. Go ahead and grab it at the base of the handle and it's much easier to control. This creates a very light, fluffy, soft and smooth velvety texture to the cake. You can do it without sifting it, but it won't rise as well and won't be as smooth. Now you're going to grab 5 eggs and separate the egg whites and the egg yolks into 2 separate bowls. Both will be whipped with a mixer. Now you're going to add 3/4 cups of white sugar to the egg yolks and beat on high with an electric mixer for about 1.5 to 2 minutes until pale yellow like this. Next, we're going to add 1/3 cup of whole milk and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract to the egg yolk mixture and gently fold it in. I use a spatula to scoop the bottom, go around the edges, and gently cut through the middle. This is called the machinage technique. Using this technique prevents the air that we whipped into it from leaving. You don't want to mash this thing into oblivion. Let's keep the air in it and be gentle with it. Now it's time for my daughter to give it a go. I think she did an amazing job for her first time making tres leches. Now we're going to beat our egg whites on high speed with the goal of attaining stiff peaks. First we'll whip it with a whisk until it foams. Then we'll add 1/4 cup of white sugar to the mixture. We don't want to overbeat it, but we want to attain firm peaks. Any amount of fat in the bowl will ruin this, so before you do this, you want to make sure you have a very clean bowl. I took a little bit of white vinegar on a paper towel and wiped the bowl down. One last thing to add, this can also be done with an electric hand mixer. Next, we're going to add the egg yolk mixture to the flour and gently fold it in until fully incorporated. Remember, we want to keep the air in there as much as possible. Next, we're going to gently fold in the egg white mixture. Everything with this recipe is gentle. You want to be delicate because you want a light, fluffy, airy texture in the end. Trust me, it's all worth it. So yeah, don't beat that air out of it. You see how fluffy it is? Just mix in the egg yolk mixture with the egg whites and use the same macronage technique that we talked about earlier. Scoop it around the bowl and cut it down the middle. Sometimes it's a little hard with this, especially if you overbeat this, but you'll see how I work it out in the end. Another thing to add, don't think recipes are too complicated for children. If you start them young, they'll learn how to do it and they'll do an excellent job by the time they're our age. Now we're going to pour our batter into our buttered pan and spread it out evenly. Make sure you push it out gently because we want to keep all of that air in this batter. Now we're going to place it on the middle oven rack to bake at 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. You should check it at 25 minutes by doing the toothpick test. Now we're moving on to the tres leches syrup, or syrup, however you want to say it. Add 1/3 cup of whipping cream, 7 to 8 ounces of condensed milk. A regular can is about 14 ounces, so I added a touch over a half. Next, you want to add a full 12-ounce can of evaporated milk and whisk. This is what the cake will look like when it's done baking. When it's cooled to room temperature, take a fork and pierce holes throughout the entire cake. Then, you want to drizzle the tres leches all over the cake and let it sit while you're making your whipped cream. Our cake is all soaked, and we will work on the cream. Pour in 2 cups of cold whipping cream and 2 tablespoons of white sugar into a clean bowl and whisk on high for about 1.5 to 2 minutes until thick and whipped. In order to ensure my whipped cream would turn out as I wanted, I popped my heavy cream in the freezer 10 minutes before making this. I also grabbed a bag of frozen vegetables and held it to the bottom of the bowl to ensure the bowl was cold. We want to get this right the first time, leaving nothing up to chance. Now that we have that all done, let's get the whipped cream on the cake and spread that thing. I use a spatula, but hey, I mean, it doesn't even matter with this recipe. You can be as messy as you want to be, or as neat as you want to be. Also, you can garnish the top of this with some sliced strawberries or a sprinkle of cinnamon. This time I use a sprinkle of cinnamon, and I've tried it with strawberries as well. It works out great. Cool, now we're all done. It's time to slice and serve. The knife slides through it like butter. Personally, I like this cake chilled overnight. It allows the cake to really soak up all the tres leches syrup. Thanks for watching, sharing. You know this is for you. Can't stop, won't stop, GameStop. Shout out to my daughter for always being down to cook with me. Ooh wee!